Welcome to the Wandering Creatives podcast. I'm your host, Alli, and joining me today is Katrina, and she is a digital nomad and life and career break coach. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am really looking forward to hearing about your journey from 9-to-5er to full-time career break coach and kind of the ups and downs that you have gone through on that adventure. And you and I actually recorded an episode for my other podcast, the Fun with Friends podcast. In that episode, we kind of really talked about that first career break that you did and how it kind of helped you transition into that nomadic lifestyle. So I'd recommend everyone listening to this episode to hop on over to the Fun with Friends podcast and listen to that episode with Katrina, where we talk more about what it's like being a digital nomad, because that will kind of give you a little extra information on who Katrina is and how she got into doing what she does. So definitely check it out. In today's episode, we are going to be hearing more about your journey in starting your own business and what some of the struggles have been that you've experienced. And I think it's really easy for people to kind of get caught up in the glamour of social media and what it means to work for yourself and be a digital nomad. And there's a little bit of a facade, I guess, sometimes when you look at folks who are really kind of like pushing that on social media. And so for a lot of us, it's not necessarily that glamorous. And there is a bit of a struggle, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And so I'm really excited to kind of hear what your experience has been like. When you quit your job, did you go just straight into having your own business, or did you kind of have like a set up as a side hustle before you decided to make that leap?
Yeah. So I was actually working a full-time job when I was starting to practice as a life coach. So I'd gotten certified while I was working and then had started taking some paid clients towards the end of that process. And so for me, it meant, I was working a very demanding, corporate job during the week. And then I was coaching on the evenings and on the weekends. So it was definitely like a side hustle. It almost felt like a main hustle, just the level of time and, dedication that I was putting into it. But I kept that full-time job for the first year. So I had that job for a year. I actually did something that I was really proud of myself for, which was taking a job where I didn't see the opportunity to reduce my hours, but like getting really clear on what I wanted and needed, which was at least one day off a week to really work on my business. And being that I worked for a smaller company, the plus side is that they were very understanding of, following your passions and building a business. But then the downside is that there was only one me. And so if I wanted less time, that was going to be hard. There weren't a lot of people to shift my work to, but I did ask, and I was very thoughtful about how it might work. And, to my company's credit, they were really supportive of that. And so they let me take, as a trial period for 3 months, they let me take one day off a week on Mondays, I think was my day. And so at that point, it was still, I was still working really hard, but it was creating a little bit of space to have some sanity and really be able to focus on my business wholeheartedly, that one day a week, and then, keep working on my full-time job. So that went on for about a year. And then I left my corporate job and I was like so excited. I was ready to do the thing, right? You talk about the glamour and the sexiness of having your own business. And I was like, I'm just going to do this. This is going to be amazing. And it was not amazing. And I hopped out of that company right onto the struggle bus. And really I went through some things trying to make it work. So
Yeah, I think that's probably more common than people realize, because those are kind of the stories that you don't get to hear a whole lot about, especially again, like on social media. Like, the struggle might be mentioned a little bit, but it is real. But man, that's super cool about your job, like letting you kind of do one day a week to just really focus on your own business. Like, I don't know if I've heard of a lot of other places that are kind of willing to do that. So that's super awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. And I would just say, if this is resonating with anyone listening right now, if you're thinking that this would be amazing, it did feel impossible for me when I first considered it, but I thought I'd rather ask, right? And know that I can't do it than to just assume. And so I got really clear on what the benefit was for me. So I knew why I was asking, but I also got really clear on how it could work for them and really trying to let them know I had their best interest right at heart, as far as, not just blowing up the company with my disappearance every Monday. So, I think you can make a case, and I would argue that during these pandemic times, right? Like, I think companies are having to stretch and be more willing to accommodate the things that you want to do because, people are leaving, because people are stretched to the edge, so I think, it's probably even an easier time right now to ask for what you want thoughtfully and get a positive response.
Was this after your first career break that you took, or is this?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
So my first break was 2013. I came back in 2015, started working and paid off all my debt in about 2 years. And so in that period, I'd gone back to corporate to pay off the last like 45-ish thousand dollars that I'd owed in student loans as fast as possible. And so, yeah, so then that was this period. And then after that, I got certified towards the end of paying off my debt. And then I kept working while trying to build my business on the side for about another year.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so we talked about this in the Fun with Friends episode, or I gushed is a better word for it, about your budgeting skills. So I want to know, like, listeners, like, are you interested in hearing more, especially from Katrina, about budgeting and how you can essentially like go into a job, maybe part-time, full-time, with the sole purpose of just getting money to budget and pay off debt. And, maybe even like putting enough aside so that you have a little like nest egg as you go into running your own business. Definitely let us know. Let us know if that's something that you're interested in. It's definitely something I'm interested in. So we might just have an episode on it because I want to learn more. But I want to know, like, if you got some budgeting questions, because it's definitely something I think is super helpful. And I'm just like so impressed that you were able to do that. Like, insane to me. So moving from that last corporate job that you had and going into your just full force into coaching, what were some of the struggles that you had when you did that, when you went full-time into your own business?
Yeah. So I think a lot of these are going to be relatable, but I think one of them is, you rip the seal, you come out and it's like, you're like, I've built it, they will come. And people don't just show up, right? And you have to be all kinds of visible, and you have to get comfortable with sales and making offers and just telling people what you do. And I think for so many of us, especially if you've, had a career as an employee, like, these are just skills you don't practice. In fact, it's almost, sometimes to the opposite. And so for me, there was an element of, I did this big, bold thing. I showed the universe I'm serious. I'm going all in on this dream. And it didn't immediately manifest. And I was like, wait, what? Isn't this the part where it all magically, like a genie comes and he gives me like everything, I want? So that was, I think that level of, you still have to keep talking, and you still have to be visible. I think that was a struggle, just because I was like, but I've already been talking for like a year. Isn't that long enough? But honestly, a huge part of my struggle was mental. It was on the inside. And what I would say is that there was something that didn't feel right. And what was really, really hard to make peace with is that I have this business. I'm supposed to love it to the ends of the earth. I've left my corporate job for it. I really believed it was the thing, right? I was like, this is amazing. This is my thing. This is my next right step. This is what I'm going to do. But there was something about it that every step I took, it felt like it got harder and harder and harder. It was like I was in quicksand. And so every time I moved, like, the force working against me, got greater. Mm-hmm. And, I'd invested a lot of money into becoming a coach and really like trying to start a business. I had spent just, the most expensive investment was I'd spent $15,000 on working with a media company to help me really build my brand. And, we started a podcast, I did a course, like all the things, right? Do all the things, because that's what my type A self knows. Do all the things and do them perfectly and make it look shiny and glossy for the people. But it was headed in a different direction than I wanted to go. And, we can talk more about this, but ultimately I was trying to make smart, strategic MBA business decisions about my business. And those were not in alignment with what Katrina wanted. Right. And it was moving further away from what I wanted and what was true for me and more towards this idea of what I thought I should be doing. And it just started to feel very bad. And I started to feel very stuck. And I think the immense struggle was that this was supposed to be in my mind, this was supposed to feel great and be this really sort of like apex moment of freedom. And it did feel great. And I did love coaching people, but to feel like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Yeah. You were kind of saying that we almost have this kind of like preconceived notion of what it's supposed to feel like and what we're supposed to be doing. And whether that's working for someone else or working for ourselves, and it's kind of like ingrained in us. And going into working with yourself, you kind of have to you definitely have to reevaluate all of that, because all of the things that you've kind of like defined throughout your life get tossed and like turned on their heads. And like you were saying, you had this feeling that this was something that you were supposed to love and that you were supposed to like really be doing. And I do think we get caught up in that business, right? Like this is a business, which means I should be doing A, B, and C and making money and talking to people and doing press. And like, we get caught up in all of that. But like you were saying, oftentimes that leads to, it kind of dims the enjoyment of what we're doing. And sometimes you just got to like go with the flow and relax a little bit and let it take you where it's going to take you, and find the actual thing that you're meant to be doing. If any of that makes sense. I feel like I rambled a little bit there.
No, it totally makes sense. And, I think the astounding thing, right, is that for many of us, right, this is the first time we have never run a business, right? We've never run it. We've only maybe seen other people running it, but only from the outside, right? Like we aren't like their right-hand person sort of growing the business, but we have this super clear picture in our minds of what we think it's supposed to look like, something that we've never experienced, that we've never witnessed in person ever in our lives, but we could tell you very articulately like what we think it should look like. And how on earth could you know, right? How could I know what my successful business looks like if I've never had it? But like, I could tell you, I have a bunch of expectations about what it's going to look like. And I will be really effing disappointed every time it doesn't meet those, right? If I'm not aware of them and sort of like doing the work to release them. But I think that's how we show up to life, right? Somebody told me once, this is how it goes. I saw a movie about it. This is what it looks like. Social media reinforced that. So like, this is clearly what it has to be for me. And it's so often not the case.
Yeah. And I'm curious because this is something I found myself doing. Like I went full force into research, right? I was like, I'm going to look up everything I possibly can. And when I first like started thinking about what I wanted Coots Creations to be, it was marketing and branding for creatives by creatives. Like that was my thing. I wanted to make marketing and branding affordable for other creatives through, like education and marketing packages and photography, with photography being the main thing. And so I did all this research and just kept just gathering all of the information, right? But then not doing anything with it. Did you go through that kind of like analysis paralysis kind of instance when you were starting your own business, or have you experienced that before? And how did you kind of like work through it?
No, I did everything just right, Alli, the whole time from beginning to end. I don't know what you're talking about. That does not resonate with me at all. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, hell yeah, I did, right? Like that's the thing. I am smart. I know how to study in school, take a test and get an A. And that is what you are basically describing, right? Is I'm going to learn all the things so that I don't make a mistake, so that I get a perfect grade, so that everything is successful. I don't have to feel the like crushing discomfort of failure, right? I'm just going to study it and learn it by osmosis, and then I'll just go do it. And that is not how it works, right? But it took me, oh my gosh, it took me years to really accept that lesson and to view failure really as learning. And it's like, it's just learning where the expectation doesn't match the outcome, right? But it doesn't mean that there isn't an outcome. It doesn't mean there isn't value. You have to be willing. I mean, like I'm doing new things all the time. The first time I created my program, it was a 6-month program. I'd never coached someone in a 6-month container, right? I had done 3 months and I knew I could do it, but I'd never done it. And I had to like create videos and emails and things. And there was a feeling of, I wanted to spend 100 years perfecting this before I've ever offered it to anyone. But how the hell am I going to know what works and what doesn't if I never offer it to anyone? Like if no person does it, I'm creating this in my mind. not in reality. And so I think that is a hurdle many of us, especially maybe people who did well in school or who were good at being employees, right? Like, just tell me the rules and I will follow them and I will like knock this out of the park, but please don't take my playbook away and tell me to figure it out because I don't want to try and fail. Are you kidding me?
Oh my gosh. Yes. That speaks to my soul. I still find myself getting caught up in that a lot of times and just like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to read about this one topic for like days, but then I like don't actually implement anything that
Yeah. And that's not where the people are, right? You want the people to come, but it's like the more time you spend trying to figure out how to do it, quote unquote, right. Those are lost opportunities. Right. And so I've had to practice getting more comfortable with being visible, even when I feel like I'm not offering the perfect thing or in the most perfect package. But I've also just had to get really comfortable with offering things and being willing to know that it gets better from here. Right. That is like the most amazing thing, is to give yourself permission to know it gets better from here. Like all these examples that we're inundated with are not the first pass that someone had at this course, at this podcast, right? It's been an evolution. And pick your favorite podcast that's been around for a while and go back to the beginning and be like, oh, their tech wasn't so great. Or, oh, like they didn't really, they were just stumbling a lot, right? Like, but everybody gets more comfortable. Everybody, even YouTube videos, go find people that have, hundreds of thousands of followers and go look at their first video. And you're like, oh, that's kind of rough. But it's the people who are willing to just show up, right? Imperfectly are the ones who make it to the finish line, because you have to start somewhere. You have to take some action. Yeah. But it's not easy.
No, it definitely is not.
This episode of the Wandering Creatives podcast is sponsored by Coots Creations, branding and marketing for creatives by creatives. Coots Creations serves small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creatives throughout the country with branding, marketing, and social media management. We accomplish this by creating unique graphics, a cohesive visual brand, and content that tells your brand's story and builds trust with your customers. Visit cootscreations.com and book your free consultation today.
So when you started, you kind of like really put your head down and like worked hard and like plowed ahead for like 6 months, just trying to like really get your business up and going. And you had like success, right? You had some clients, like you said, you were doing okay, but you felt like you weren't necessarily like going in the right direction. And that's when you did Career Break number 2. And you've said that it was kind of like on accident that you kind of just like, I guess, took a break, I suppose. Yeah. But can you kind of share a little bit about like what that career break helped with and how it kind of helped you realign your business goals, business and life goals?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And, it sounds silly to say that it was by accident, but, I was not intending to be on a break. I was intending to start a really successful business and have my happily ever after. And I think, I was having some success. So it's like, well, it's working-ish. So why would I stop this? But like I said, every step forward felt like 3 steps back as far as like alignment and moving in the right direction went. And so what had happened was, after about 6 months of, like you said, just trying to push through it, I was like, oh my God, I just give up. I cannot, right? Like this feels so freaking bad. I felt paralyzed by every decision. I felt like every time I had to show up and talk about what I did, I hated like the copy I was writing or the things I was sharing, because it just didn't feel like what I wanted to say, although I wasn't clear on what I wanted to say. And so I just felt very confused. I felt very lost. And there was like a pervasive sense of sadness that was sort of like cascading over me, and it just kept building and building. And so instead of just pushing through that, I just said, I'm done. I'm going on a break. And it was like literally one day to the next, right? I mean, I already had left my corporate job, so it wasn't like I had to tell somebody I'm turning in my resignation. I just decided, like, I woke up one day and I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. And so secretly, I finished with my clients, and I love my clients. And if somebody was referred to me or would reach out to me, I would do a session or a couple of sessions. I took a couple of clients in that period, but I was not looking for work. I was not talking about what I did. I was not making offers. I was not updating my website. I was not showing up on social media to share anything of value in regards to, like being a coach. So that is like how I ended up on this accidental break. And so I'm just like really feeling lost. And, I didn't think I should be traveling because I already had a break. Part 1, Funds with Friends, right? Like I took a, like a 20-month break. Why do I need to travel again? But I stayed domestic for a while and just kind of bopped around a little. And then I was like, you know what? I just really want to go abroad and I don't know why. And it doesn't make any sense, but that's what I need. And so I decided to go back to my happy place, which is Buenos Aires. And so I flew from the US down to Argentina and I just rented an Airbnb for a month. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I need to go be in sunshine because it was becoming their summer. It was growing into our winter. And I was like, I need to be in the sunshine in a happy place. It just makes me feel good. And so I spent almost 5 weeks just being in Buenos Aires and the most amazing things happened while I was there. But two of the most amazing things were people related. So I met a guy on like my third day of being in the city on a tour. And he was this British guy, very funny, Richard. He was awesome, but he was the same age as me. He had a similar story as far as like leaving his corporate job. He'd been on a break. He felt lost. He'd been at a retreat for like the self-development stuff. And like, I'm working on myself. Like, why am I so unhappy? Like having this dream job, whatever. And he's working on himself. And so we just like clicked and it turned out we were leaving the country on the same day. Like our flights were on the same day. So it was like, we just became like BFFs and we would meet every 2 or 3 days and just take these like 4 or 5 hour long strolls through the city and just talk about life and process like what we were learning about ourselves, things we were reading, like pondering life. And he was obsessed with coffee and I was obsessed with ice cream. So we would always do both, but it was like really funny, but we would just take these long thought-provoking strolls. And I think having someone that you felt like really saw you and could feel you on a certain level, being able to like process and just feel heard and seen every, 2 or 3 days, it was very cathartic. And I think that was really helpful to like move things through me. And then the other thing happened about halfway through my time there. It was a different tour. This was a food tour. And I met a local who decided to take this food tour and learn more about, like the city's cultural hotspots for food. She was amazing. And she, shared a story with me after the tour. Like we just hit it off and kind of escaped to a tea house for like some tea. She was explaining to me that she lost her husband when she was, I think he was 37 and to colon cancer, I think. And it was this really emotional, raw sort of like conversation that we had about loss. And my brother died very unexpectedly, my younger brother, right before my first career break started. And like it had been 5 years at that point. So definitely gone through grief. But what came up for me and these two magical humans that came into my life at just the right time is that I had unprocessed grief from my brother's death. So I thought I'd done it all. Like grief is supposed to be linear, right? Like you're really, really sad. You feel like you're going to die and then you feel like you're not going to die. And then you're like neutral. And then you like find some happiness in life and you live happily ever after. But that is not how grief actually works. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that, life. It just comes and it hits you, right? It hits you right when you don't expect it. And I had some things that I missed about my brother that I hadn't really had to feel on a level before. And so that just kind of came in and I was like, oh my God, this lonely, awful sadness is because of this. And just even knowing what it was because of really helped me start to like embrace it, but then let go of it. And then the other part was, really seeing that I wasn't aligned with the focus I had on my business. And that was okay. Just giving myself permission to let it be okay. It was not okay for the longest time. I was bad. I was going to fail. I was messed up. I was confused. I was blah, blah, blah. Right. Like just to let it be okay that it wasn't okay. And that was pivotal. And so what came out of that, I think, was shedding some of that grief, just moving through that grief that kind of came for me unexpectedly, but also it was the clarity that I really needed to do something mission driven. So everybody has different motives. Some people start a business because it's really fun. It's like a game to achieve, right? They want to just win and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's super fun. And they're maybe a little competitive and like, ooh, can I do this? Can I do this? And it's like learning, iterate, learn. For me, it wasn't enough to like love what I do. I need to have a mission. I need to have a bigger purpose because I can go so hard at something and achieve my butt off, but I will burn out, crash, and like come like just basically crashing down if it's not for something that really matters and gets me jazzed up. And so, kind of coming out of that break, which officially didn't even happen until the very beginning of the pandemic, I was forced, to be still like the rest of the world. And I had now at this point, 18 months, almost 2 years of like traveling again, because Buenos Aires led to more travel and more, I was on a break. It was all a process, right? Like I still kept traveling and all the things. But I think at the end of that time, I was like, what is true for me now is that I really want to talk about career breaks because before I was talking about career transition, which sounds
Oh,
similar, but it's not because it's the safe option, right? Do you hate your job? Let's just find you a better job that you hate
mhm.
less. Are you unhappy in life? Let's
Yeah.
find something that feels really safe, but is just different enough that you can pretend that you're fine and you can go another 5 to 10 years ignoring your misery, right? But it was
Yep.
like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have a bigger niche that is more general, which is where, like the media company was kind of guiding me. I don't want to have this broad niche that appeals to everyone. I want to talk about breaks. People need breaks. And so I think having taken two and having them be completely different experiences, one super planned, budgeted, like check the boxes. This is a perfect break. I mean, literally like look up textbook break. It was like really good, right? Including like coming back to land 5 job offers in 5 weeks. It was like nailed it to the
Wild.
second, like, I know, but to the second messy, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how long this is. Like, I don't know why I'm not happy. Like, it was like, wow, I have gone through the spectrum of experiences with this. I've taken two of them spanning a total of like 4 years. I think I know something about breaks. And I also know how important and life changing they are in different ways. And so coming out of that, it was like, this is my mission. This is what I'm here to talk about. At the beginning of a pandemic,
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell people to quit their jobs and take a break.
It's the perfect time. It's the perfect time.
Yeah.
What a wonderful, wonderful experience. Like that's one of the things that I think, like I personally, I haven't traveled a whole lot, but when I have, like meeting other people and kind of like bonding with them, even if it's like for a short period of time, is one of the best things about traveling. And your experiences in Buenos Aires just like sounds so wonderful. And like you said, like just very like cathartic and thought provoking. And I love that. I feel like that is something that everyone should experience or hopefully will experience in their lives at least a couple of times because it really does make a huge difference. So when you got back, you definitely like had a better sense of where you wanted to go. So less, like you said, career transition and more into like, it's okay. It's okay to take a break and to slow down, take a sabbatical, do whatever.
Yeah.
And really kind of like niched down when it came to your business. What was that transition or like relaunch experience like for you? Was it just like super, I feel like it was just like this really joyful, like kind of awakening in your business.
Yeah, it was a mix of things. So, I had felt so lost for so long. And like I said, like things started to shift in Argentina, but I still gave myself that next year of traveling because it was like, it still hadn't clicked for me what next. Like, I feel like I processed the pain of the past and like gave myself permission to let it be okay. But I hadn't figured out at that point exactly what I was going to go into. And then, like I said, when COVID happened and everything shut down, I got really still and I had to ask myself, like, Katrina, your savings is dwindling. Like, what the hell are you going to do to replace this girl? Get your life together. And, I had been coaching people on career breaks secretly with the transition. Like that was one of the options, right? Be an entrepreneur, switch your career or take a break. And those were the conversations I most love to have, but it was also the stories I wanted to tell. And so when I started, it wasn't like the angels came down and started singing and I was like, oh, I have all this clarity there. I knew one thing, Alli, one tiny thing, which was I have been through a crazy 2 years. And I want to inspire and empower people to know that it's okay to take a break. I didn't know I wanted to coach again. I didn't know I wanted to relaunch my own business. I just knew the one truth is I had stories to share and lessons to teach people. And so this is the crazy part, but I was like, I'm going to do this. So I started showing up on social media, just telling stories, like just doing a post about a picture of a travel, like a picture of I'd taken and a story or a lesson, right? And soon into that, I was like, you know what? I really don't like showing up on social media every day and writing posts from scratch. It sucks out my whole life. So I was like, I need help. I need help, right? I had no offer. I had no clients. I had no idea if I was even going to go back into business, but I hired a virtual assistant. I was like, you know what I want? I want to follow the seed of truth as far as it will take me. And I just feel like my next right step is to make this fun and make it easy. And what would feel easy is to have someone like batching my stuff. So like I'm writing all at once and they're like parsing it out for me and they're posting it into a scheduling app and like doing it for me. That would feel like a miracle. I had no money and I'm like, okay, $500 a month. I'm just going all in because it literally felt like this is all that I know. This one truth is that I have to do this thing and I won't consistently show up if I don't get help. So I hired a virtual assistant with no business. And then she was like, listen, I don't think you're as far away from your answers as you think you are. And I'm like, well, you don't know me. I'm pretty far away. And she's like, no, you're not. And she was right. So, like a month later after doing this and having people engage with me, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to do this and I want to be a career break coach, like full stop, right? That's my thing. But again, I'm relaunching this during COVID. And so there was some joy in giving myself permission to just talk about the thing I really wanted to talk about and not drown it in. But you can also change your career and you can also become an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. Not that I can't help people with that, but I don't want to talk about that, right? Like if the right person comes to me, I still coach people on that stuff. But what I want to talk about, what I want to inspire and the content I want to create is to help people take a break. But, George Floyd happened and, like it was really scary times with COVID and I was staying with my mom and I felt like I couldn't leave the house because she used to be a smoker and I was like beyond paranoid that I was going to bring it back. And then I was going to be in the hospital and she was going to die and I was going to forever like be the one that killed my mom, which I just couldn't even imagine like trying to live with that. Right. So everything felt really intense. And I think it made that experience more challenging, but boy, oh boy, did it give me one amazing thing. And that is the ability to create my own joy. So this was the one thing on the days that life felt impossibly bleak and super hard. I was doing one thing that lit me all the way up and that literally created this, like while I was doing it, this like burning funnel of joy. It was just like this little fire of joy. And to be able to not need like a vacation, a trip, a job, another person, a partner to bring joy to my life, but to be able to create it from the inside out was like, wow. And so, that for me, like restarting that business was like the spark in a very, very dark time as far as like where our country was and what we were going through. And I just kept trying to like fan that flame, right? Hiring a VA and then like sharing more and then putting things out there. And so, just maybe a month or two later, I started making offers and there was some mind drama. Like I had a business. And so will it even be able to do what I did before? And it's like you're starting over. Definitely some assets, like the fact that people knew who I was and I had told stories and I'd had clients helped. It was not the same as starting from the beginning, but there definitely is like that restart inertia energy of like just getting out there again. And people are like, oh, you're doing that again. Like, you have to just tell people what you're doing. But it just became like this thing that just started taking off. And, by the end of the year, I was back to, which would have been about 4 or 5 months in. So about 4 months in, I had started like making what I'd made before when I was sort of hitting that brick wall. And then really crazily, like this year has been, my best months ever. And, some months are like painfully low because it's the life of an entrepreneur. But in May, I hit 12K, which was just like, wow. Like that is, that full disclosure, my biggest month by far. But for me to do that really showed me what is possible. I have not quite unlocked it to bring that and put it on tap. Right. But that is possible. That is something that can be for me. And I did it my way. I didn't do it being a career transition coach, working with a really expensive media company. Like I just did it showing up and telling people during a pandemic to quit their job and go find their freaking happiness. Like that doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense, right? But it all comes together. And I think that is the beauty of following your next right step and being on a mission, right? It doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to see how it all comes together, but you just keep showing up and somehow, the next step appears and you find a way to make it to that next step. And so, in that 1 month, my best month, I made more than any other month in any MBA corporate job that I'd ever had. So it's like, okay, this is possible. I can be all kinds of successful, right? Doing my own thing for my own self. And so then the challenge becomes recreate this, grow this, keep going. Don't stop when you have a bad month. Like keep, reminding yourself what's possible.
I honestly wish that people could like see me right now. Like my cheeks legitimately hurt from smiling because it's like, you can tell just like from the way that I can hear how excited you are and like how joyful you are when you talk about what you do. And it like gets me pumped up. But I'm like, my face hurts so bad from smiling so much. But it's like, it's so awesome. Like I love hearing stories like this where you found something that truly brings you joy and that you absolutely love, and being able to like bring that to other people and help other people is just awesome. Like I love it. And to be successful, whether it's monetarily or like, whatever you define success as, like, yeah, money's great, but like also happiness is wonderful too.
Yes. It's so happiness is so valued. And, I had this crazy thought, Alli, just the other day, I was walking down the street, and this is literally like 2 days ago. And I was thinking about, I don't have kids, and I was just thinking about like legacy type stuff. And I was thinking about how that really matters to some people, right? That they leave a piece of themselves here, or that they leave like a ripple effect where even though they're gone, like something, some impact of them having been here, like almost like proof I existed was here. And I had for the very first time, this like little tiny like voice inside that was like, but all your clients. And I was like, what? And then I started to think about, how life coaching changed my life when I had a life coach, and then how I've paid that forward. And I think about like the, hundreds of people that I've talked to and coached. And I'm like, oh my God, like I've changed lives. And then those people will go on to do different things and more empowered things because of that. And, maybe it's with their kids, their family, but maybe it's other people, and it just keeps going around. And I was like, oh my God, like I have a job where like I am literally like leaving in some ways the planet better than I found it, or at least trying to have like a positive lasting impact. And that was like, do I really get to do this for a living? That's amazing. This should be illegal.
Yeah, that's such an amazing realization to have. And that's kind of how I feel about like podcast coaching, because I get to help people kind of define and realize like why they want to podcast. And for me, podcasting is like, it's a transformational experience, right? Like it's helped me with my confidence. It's helped me, start my own career and my own business. And it can do that for other people. But then you're also kind of like, I call them my podcast babies, but I'm helping someone like go from this like little nugget of an idea that they have and growing that with them and then setting them free into the world. And so, yeah, it's an amazing feeling to be able to say like, yeah, there are like little pieces of me with these other people that are going out and also doing like absolutely amazing things. So it's one of the best things. Yeah, I think about.
Right. Like like pieces of us get to stick around and be like, they exist because we had the courage to do our thing. I just think that's like the most fantastic thing.
You get to create their own ripple effect.
Totally.
Do you know what goes great with listening to podcasts? If you said a warm drink, you're absolutely right. Just imagine you're sitting back, you're listening to your favorite podcast, all while holding a nice, cute-ass mug in your hand with your favorite hot beverage in it. If you're wondering, where can I get a mug like that? Well, you're in luck. You can swing by the Coots Creations cute coffee and tea mugs Etsy shop. They've got everything from enamel coffee cups to travel mugs, all featuring adorable original artwork. Head over to etsy.com/shop/Coots Creations and use promo code WANDER for 10% off any mug.
What are some recommendations that you would have for other entrepreneurs or individuals that are looking to kind of find their passion, or maybe they've already started their business and they're just like going through something similar to what you went through, where they're just like, it's a little off and they're not sure why?
Yeah. So, I think you have to be courageous and you have to be willing to really look at the why. I wasn't at first because my MBA brain was kicking in, and the $15,000 I'd invested with these experts that like worked with way more, like people with way bigger reach and like way more money, whatever. And it was like, I have to be wrong. Like just foundationally, like starting out, it was like, well, whatever I'm thinking is clearly wrong, right? Like it's not me. I don't know what I'm doing. And so I think like you have to be really present to your truth, right? So I could have gotten to that place sooner if I had gotten still and really said, what do I want to talk about? What is the thing I am really passionate about? And again, I didn't have a whole business plan in mind the second time. It was like my truth, that seed, that nugget of truth. I'm here to tell stories and teach lessons about taking a break and what taking a break has taught me and why I think other people need to do it. And so if you feel like something's not working, or you feel like you're struggling connecting to your passion, or it feels like there's some misalignment, I think bringing it back to what is the seed of truth, and like almost like reconfiguring, resetting and saying, look, what is true, right? If I let everything go in my heart, what is true, what is guiding me, what is inspiring me, what is sparking me, and then trying to go from there and not thinking 10 steps ahead. But, another thing is a reframe. Like you have to give yourself permission to know this thing doesn't have to be your forever. I love being a career break coach. I hope I'm a career break coach. I hope I'm helping people for a very long time take breaks. But maybe one day I'll be an author, and maybe one day I'll be a speaker. And then maybe one day someone will collaborate with me and I will shift from talking about taking a break to like making every day more joyful and making every day feel like a break, right? I don't know what the evolution is, but I think so many times there's this fear of like, I can't let this go. Or if I let it go, I have to find the thing, but I have to find the thing that I can put all my chips on the table and I can go all in and I can be sure that I will ride this boat to the bottom of the ocean, still believing that it's coming back up because it's my one. And it's like, no matter what you choose, you're going to question what you're doing. That's just how the journey of entrepreneurship goes, right? You're going to have those moments where you're like, what the hell was I thinking? But also you are allowed to evolve. So start with what is true for you in this moment and know that your next right step will appear. So like go full in, decide, right? You have to make a decision. You have to commit to this is my thing right now, but know that you haven't signed a blood oath that this is your thing for the next 40 years, right? So it's like, if you do it and you succeed at it and you change your mind, or if you do it and you don't love it, but you've really committed, then you can figure that out. But I think so many times we're waffling and we're like, oh, but I really like this thing, but there's this part of it and I'm not sure. And I don't know. And it's like, that's not how life happens. It was really scary to say I'm a career break coach. Now it feels like, why was I not saying that sooner? But in the moment, right? There are like 3 career break coaches in the world. Like I'm saying I'm a career break coach. No one even knows what that is. Hello, pandemic. Hello, people. Like in that moment too, right? Like now people are really burned out, but at the beginning they were like very fearful. Is the market going to crash? Am I going to lose my job? Right? Like what I wanted made no sense. It was really, really scary, but I committed to it. It's like, this is what is true for me. So if it's not this, I don't know what the hell it is, but I am fully going to show up for this, right? I'm going to show up and be willing to accept that. And so I think that's an important thing to remember. And the last thing is like, just really be courageous. Like go where courage leads you. Don't go where fear leads you. I think when you're struggling, there's usually like some really uncomfortable thing that you're being called to do and you're resisting it. Not always, but usually. And so, like what would courage do is a great question to ask yourself, in those moments, but really just have permission, right? Like I said in the beginning, I think giving yourself permission to just find your truth. And then when you've figured out your truth, even if it's very small, committing to it, deciding that's it, letting it go, that you have to do it forever, just really committing to it for right now. I think those are the secrets I would say, I've learned through my experience, and the recommendations I would have for anyone that feels like they're struggling with that too.
Yeah. Just got to put yourself out there. Gotta take that leap.
Yes. Take the leap.
I do have one more question. When you were kind of on your second career break, or, maybe if this is something you do maybe not on the daily, but anyways, do you have did you journal, or did you have some type of method to kind of like work through your thoughts, or like some tools that you kind of tapped into while you were kind of like muddling through all of this?
Yeah, I did. So, like we talked about people before, I think I was very willing to make time and space for connections with other humans that were on a similar journey or that I could relate to in that moment. Right. So whether it was in a cafe in Argentina or at home in my town, or, traveling on a digital nomad cruise with 300 other digital nomads from Barcelona to Brazil, right? Like in all of those moments, really investing in relationships, because I think processing, right? And even like expanding your awareness of what is possible happens when you meet other people. But as far as like internal processing goes, I did journal. I'm a big fan of like stream of consciousness journaling, where you just like let whatever's in your brain sort of like dump out onto the page. But I actually have to say the very first thing I really did to bring myself back to myself was restarting a nightly gratitude practice. So I basically have a really tiny journal and I leave it by my bed, and I would write at least 3 things I was grateful for, but I would really try to fill the page. So my journal is like the size of a passport. So I would try to like in tiny print, like fill that whole page with things I was grateful for. And I think it's so simple, and people are like, yeah, I'm grateful. I'm thankful all the time, but there is an immense difference between, it's really nice to have running water. It's really nice to have my health, versus writing like, today when that person held the door for me and like looked me in the eye and like just when I was running late, I am so grateful to be seen. I am so grateful to be helped. Right. Or if it's like, the day that like you got an extra $100 in your bank account because there was an error, and it's like, I am so to relive that moment and tap into the feeling of how it felt to experience that validation, that gift, that positivity, that excitement. It's like a whole different world than just thinking like, yeah, I have nice things. That's so disconnected. And so I think honestly, like really processing and feeling good about my life again and really refocusing started with the foundation of feeling joyful for what I already had, of bringing myself back to what is really good in this present moment, what is here for me now. And like life is actually really good. Even though I can't always feel it, I can reconnect to that. And I think that was like a very grounding thing on top of the journaling and the processing and then the people as well.
Love it. Amazing advice and tips. I'm a huge fan of journaling. So I was curious if that was something that you also used and how that worked for you. So great advice.
Yeah. And actually you just reminded me. So when I was in the process of restarting, I felt like I needed sort of this miraculous bout of clarity. And so I signed up for this program called Happy Magic, which was just basically an email drip over 90 days with journaling prompts about like what you want to manifest and getting clear. It was so fantastic. So actually, now that you say that, it wasn't in Argentina, it was like much after that. But when I was ready to really refocus for my business and I felt like it was impossible and I wasn't quite sure where to start, that program was fantastic. I think it's like $100, but it was so kind of like pivotal to me, really like getting my, it sounds so cheesy, but getting your vibe back up, like getting to that positive place where you're calling things in. But also it was a journey. I mean, that's all it is 10 minutes of like journaling a different prompt every day and really like seeing things in a different way. And I do think that practice was immensely helpful to realigning and refocusing when I was launching my business. So thank you for prompting me to remember that.
Yeah, no, what was the name of it? Happy Magic?
Happy Magic. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to look into that because that
so
sounds
good. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty awesome program. I'm always on board for a good prompt. As we wrap up, I want to thank you again. This is the second time you've been on one of my podcasts, and I have enjoyed so much just learning about your journey and the experiences that you've had. And I can't thank you enough for kind of sharing your story with us. I really, really appreciate it. Where can folks find you online if they have questions or they want to reach out?
Yeah. So you guys can find me on Instagram. So I hang out there on the daily. I'm at K McGhee Coaching, KMCGHEE Coaching, but you can find me there. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and I have a website, which is kmcgeecoaching.com, but primarily I'm on Instagram. And if you want to know more about me, my website is a great resource for that.
Amazing. And again, thank you so much for being on. And listeners, like I said, if you want to know more about how Katrina did all of her budgeting so that she could launch her own business, let us know. And if you have questions, you can also call or text at 252-419-6004. That's 252-419-6004. And we will answer your questions on a future episode of the podcast. And so, yeah, Katrina, I can't thank you enough. I absolutely love having you on the pod.
Thank you for having me. This was really, I think it was good for me too, to just reflect on the journey. So I feel like you asked some really great questions, and I think I'm even feeling more inspired. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I get to go work on my business.
My cheeks are just like so sore from all the smiling. So this has been so wonderful. And thank you all for listening, and be sure to like, rate, and review the podcast. And you can follow us on Instagram at wandering_creative_. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful day. Bye.
This has been a Coots Creations production. Follow the show on Instagram at wandering_creative_ and on Twitter at wandering_pod. For more information, go to cootscreations.com. Like, rate, review, and subscribe. To sponsor the Wandering Creatives podcast, visit www.cootscreations.com/podcast-sponsorship-opportunities. You can also click the link in the episode description below. To be a guest or a featured maker on the podcast, Click the link in our Instagram bio or contact us at cootscreationsllc@gmail.com.